the whole of human history is full of secrets and mysteries. In fact, even now, in the age of science and technology, our whole world order is causing thousands of questions, many of which cannot be fully answered by scientists. The Time Puzzle crew tries to uncover some of those mysteries surrounding the mysterious places of Kazakhstan.
The stone valleys stretching between the mountains of Big and Small Kalkan. A huge barkhan from bright yellow sand towers in the center, striking imagination. It seemed that the powerful winds blowing here constantly would have dispersed all the sand mass in the nearby surroundings. But the barkhan not only did not move from this place in millennia, as if triumphing over the surrounding landscape, sometimes it hallows the district with a loud roar, as if sounding from the very depth. A singing barkhan, as people call it, is not the only miracle in these places. Our park is actually organized for the sake of three ungulates, for the sake of those redbugs that now live in our country. Rare animals and amazing plants of Altyn-Emel. The age of these wonderful trees is estimated for a few hundred years, and their amazing shape and gigantic dimensions are simply amazing. Martian landscapes and the Moon Mountains. These are the traces of activity of volcanoes on the territory of our park, which most likely acted after the ocean had dried up. And already there was such an interesting tectonic activity that left its traces in the form of these lava mountains. World-famous, mysterious natural phenomena. From all over the world, not only near abroad or far abroad, or say Latin America or Europe. People from all over the world come here, literally from all over the world. Watch in today's episode, Extraordinary Journey Through Fantastic Places. Altyn-Emel, a unique national nature park located 250 kilometers southeast of Almaty. This is a real treasure trove of natural puzzles, literally scattered among the unearthly landscapes of these places. Hello, this is The Time Puzzle and me, Sergei Alexeyanak. This National Nature Park was established on April 10th, 1996 in the valley of the Ili River. Its territory is huge, more than 500,000 hectares, on which it is possible to meet three different types of landscape: mountain, sandy desert and gravely clay desert. There live more than 400 species of animals, birds, reptiles and insects. And the local flora boggles the mind with unusual beauty and diversity. There are more than 1,800 plant species in Altyn-Emel. There are many rare species among the representatives of the local flora and fauna. They are listed in the Red Book. To study and preserve all this natural diversity, the National Park has a Science, Information and Monitoring Department headed by Madina Salmanova. Our park is actually organized for the sake of three ungulates, for the sake of those redbugs that now live in our country. They are the kulan, argali and gazelle. That is, gazelles are the only gazelles on the territory of Central and Middle Asia, which live just in our park. And fortunately, they reproduce very well. The kulans were brought to us from the Balsa-Kelmes in the 80s of the last century, because there they were no longer able to exist. And Arka, this is a mountain ram, which lives in our mountains, is also an animal that is under protection. To meet these unique creatures in a natural environment is the dream of many photographers, tourists and naturalists. But one of the most rare and interesting inhabitants of the park, Altyn-Emel, is another animal. Once it practically disappeared from our planet, but scientists in different countries managed to save the population, which is being restored, including in Kazakhstan. This is the famous and mysterious Przewalski's horse. Przewalski's horse is not inhabitant to our territory. Now this is the experience of reintroduction in our country. We have it on semi-enclosure maintenance, and so far the flock is so small that we cannot yet release it into free life. This is an experience. The history of discovering this animal is interesting and mysterious. Nikolai Przewalski was a famous Russian traveler and naturalist, researcher of the Ussuri region and Central Asia. In 1878, returning from his second expedition to Central Asia, in the region of Lake Zaisan on the border with China, he received a gift from a local merchant, skin and skull captured by animal hunters. The scientists sent a present to St. Petersburg to the Zoological Museum, where it was explored by Ivan Polyakov, the famous zoologist, anthropologist and ethnographer. It was Polyakov who made the discovery that the sample sent belonged to an unknown horse later named after Przewalski. The Przewalski horse is called Kirtaki or Kirtak. They're inhabitants of our region, I mean Kazakhstan. Not specifically Altyn-Emel, but Kazakhstan. And before they wandered from Mongolia to our lands, they were also here on this territory. And now we just want to try to risk it, let's say. Why not? The territory is typical for them, we have the possibilities for grazing, for reproducing, and it looks like the mission is possible, and we will be engaged in this reproduction. The avifauna of Altyn-Emel is interesting and diverse. While traveling through the park, you can meet kakliks, vultures, eagles, golden eagles, and many more large and small birds. Winged predators hunt for various small rodents and lizards. The sand-toad agama is one of the most common species of reptiles. As it turned out, it is extremely sociable creation. According to the local huntsman, these lizards are so accustomed to the attention of tourists that they allow themselves to be approached at a fairly close distance. But predators have to try to catch a toad-agama. In case of danger, it immediately buries into the sand with the help of rapid movements of the trunk. The Altyn-Emel National Park is not only one of the largest in terms of space, but also in its natural and historical content. That is why the Kazakh Geographic Society attaches special importance to it. The Kazakh Geographical Society considers this natural park of Altyn-Emel to be the main treasure of Kazakhstani nature, because of its historical legacy, the barrows of the Bez-Shatir, the steles of the Oshaktas, which, by the way, are connected with the name of Genghis Khan. These are unique natural formations, the chalk mountains of Katutau, Radon springs and singing barkhans, which, by the way, are included in 7 wonders of Kazakhstan. And we believe that this is undoubtedly the pearl of Kazakhstan in the development of tourism of our country. Local mountain landscapes really amaze the imagination. The park includes deserted mountains, big and small Kalkan, the outermost southwestern spurs of the Jungar Alatau, Sholak, Degeres and Matai, the southern slope of the Altyn-Emel Ridge and part of the Koyanditau Ridge, and the vast intermountain valley Koni-Rolen. But perhaps the most unusual are the chalk mountains of Aktau and the volcanic mountains, the Katutau. This is also a very interesting natural and, let's say, historical object. These are the traces of activity of volcanoes on the territory of our park, which most likely acted after the ocean had dried up. And already there was such an interesting tectonic activity that left its traces in the form of these lava mountains. Having traveled more than 50 kilometers among the steppe landscapes and the bush Saxeol, the crew of the Time Puzzle got to the lava mountains. The landscape that greeted was breathtaking. We were full of feeling that we are visiting on another planet. And these incredible shapes, recalling of the stories of Antoni Gaudí and Salvador Dalí, created by nature. It is these fantastic rocks that most clearly show that the mountains of Katutau are of volcanic origin. They received their bizarre, fantastic shape from the wind. The mountains of Katutau are dead mountains. There is not a single natural source of water. Water comes here only from the sky. This is an approximate version of the translation of their name from Kazakh language. These amazing stone patterns originated in the Permian period, about 250 million years ago. As we have said, the mountains of Katutau are the remains of extinct ancient volcanoes and even resemble the frozen streams of lava. The weather here often changes sharply and strong winds, blowing regularly. But despite all visible power, the structure of these mountains is very fragile and they are prone to destruction. Unfortunately, it is this fate that awaits these mountains of fantastic beauty. Katutau is now part of the so-called Special Rest Zone, and only one gorge is open to visitors. In the tour of the park, you will be accompanied by a huntsman. It's easy to get lost among the boundless steppes and mysteriously beautiful mountain spurs without him. Janat Nesebay has been working in the national park for 13 years. He started from a simple inspector, and now he is the head of one of these sections into which the Altyn-Emel territory is divided. Local hunters regularly raid to monitor the order in the entrusted area. Janat knows every bush, every path and all local inhabitants of these places. This is the wool of Argali. The molting began. How do you say? They are combing here, right? Yes. Having wandered among the fantastic remnants of protovolcanoes Katutau, the film crew of the program went on. Our next goal is the mountains of Aktau. And again we were impressed, although it seemed that nothing could surprise us. Surrounded by the next unearthly landscapes. By the way, their incredible appearance gave rise to many myths and legends, including about the alien intervention in the origin of these natural formations. But this is just fantasy fiction, although it is worth noting that the feeling of visiting another planet did not leave the film crew. The real pearl of Altyn-Emel is these chalky mountains of Aktau, which are stunning with their unearthly beauty. People also call them lunar mountains. But the unusual look is not the only thing that makes these mountains unique. The chalk mountains of Aktau separated from the mountain range of Katutau by slightly more than 20 kilometers of steppe road and by almost 200 million years. It was that much later they appeared on the surface of the planet.
Самый первый из европейцев, который был в этой области, это был географ.
The very first of Europeans who arrived to this place was the geographer and traveler Pyotr Semyonov Tianshansky, then just Pyotr Semyonov.
Откопала в сторону нынешней Almaty.
He passed by this area moving from Kopal to the present Almaty. And it turns out that he saw these mountains and he even described them. The first thing that amazes here is the incredible color of the slopes of Aktau, as if a huge palette overturned above the mountains, splashing all the colors of the mysterious artist from pale green to bright red. The local landscape glitters in its beauty. What do these mountains owe their coloring to? It's ochre which gives this red color. It is an admixture of iron. I cannot say for sure, but I think that this is the next color. It's not something that is directly characteristics of the Cretaceous deposits then. Ochre is probably the next stage of sedimentation of these mountains. These multicolored slopes seem lifeless, like a Martian landscape. But this is not true. Here you can find flowers and shrubs, reptiles and small rodents. And millions of years ago, it was a real oasis of life. There is a version that the Altyn-Emel was the bottom of the ancient ocean. This ancient ocean belonged to the Tethys, which washed the continent of Gondwana when it had not yet broken up into our present continents. Tethys is an ancient ocean of the Mesozoic era, which washed the shores of such continents as Gondwana and Laurasia. The period of existence of the ancient ocean lies between 850 and 5 million years ago. Considering the huge time interval of its existence on the planet and the mobility of the Earth's crust, it was divided into several parts that changed their shape. The Katutau Mountains were born at the beginning of the Cenozoic era, about 60 million years ago, at the boundary of the Cretaceous of the Mesozoic era, marked by the mass death of the animal kingdom that inhabited the planet at that time. The Katutau Mountains are unique because they are the most interesting and famous place of the Cretaceous fauna of our region. That is, our paleontologists have found such interesting objects as Brontotheria. These are relatives and ancestors of rhinoceroses. Very interesting and diverse prints of plants of that period and other finds of extinct animals and plants. In our visit center there is a very good fragment of the skull of Brontotheria, which was again found by our paleontologists. This, let's say, is a living proof that the mountains of Katutau store magnificent and most interesting deposits of bones, petrified fragments of animal bodies that lived there. Brontotheres became extinct nearly 30 million years ago. They're close relatives of modern rhinos and horses, reaching a giant size, more than 2.5 meters at the withers and about 5 meters in length. This is the size of a modern African forest elephant. At that time, Brontotheres were the third largest, inferior to only Indicateric and ancient elephants. Remains of Brontotheres are also found in North America, Asia and Europe. One of the most unusual plants emphasizing the surrealism of the surrounding landscapes in the mountains of Katutau is Sistanchi salsa. Its large candles of inflorescences, reaching at times 40 centimeters in height, rise straight out of the sand. Strange appearance of these unusual flowers, completely devoid of leaves, reminds representatives of a fantastic alien flora. Tsistanke appears almost throughout the entire Altyn-Emel park, in its desert and alkaline soil zones. It is a way of life that helps her survive in harsh conditions. This flower, enchanting by its unusual beauty, is a parasite growing on the roots of flowering plants. In folk medicine, Tsistanke has been used for about 2,000 years and has a very romantic name, the root of life in the desert, ginseng deserts or golden root. Broth from this flower perfectly stimulates immunity and is a powerful tonic. But Tsistanke is not the most amazing inhabitant of Altyn-Emel National Park. Here you can meet unusual representatives of the plant world, recalling of animated monsters from a fantastic film. These trees, like fairy tale giants, are really just willows, but like everything in Altyn-Emel, they're absolutely extraordinary. The age of these wonderful trees is estimated for a few hundred years, and their amazing shape and gigantic dimensions are simply amazing. Under normal wildlife conditions, willows do not live more than 100–150 years and do not reach such gigantic sizes as those willows in Altyn-Emel. What is the secret of the local inhabitants? The whole thing, again, as we believe, as the old-timers of our park believe, for example the huntsmen and those who did it directly, it's all about the Radon springs. That is, most of our willows grow where these Radon springs flow. And most likely it contributes to such a survival here, such a bizarre form, let's say, the ridge and vastness of these willows. I think that in the near future, a detailed, accurate analysis will be made with the help of botanists, the Botany Institute, and maybe even invited specialists. Radon is a radioactive colorless gas. It was first obtained in pure form and measured in 1908. The Scottish scientist, Nobel laureate in chemistry 1904, William Ramsay, and his colleague Robert Whitlow Gray did it. In nature, radon is most often found in groundwater, in natural gases and in air. Interestingly, it is scientifically proven in the period of seismic activity, the concentration of radon increases. In the Altyn-Emel National Park, there are several springs with radon waters. One of them is right where giant, ancient willows grow. The concentration of radon that is in our springs, it assumes that it can heal not only willows, not only give this prolongation of the life cycle for them, but also it can be helpful for human health. Radon sources and the age of our willows are again, this is the version. So far this has not been confirmed by any researchers and analysis. Another one, truly unique tree growing in the national park is a variety of poplar, a desert poplar. This is the oldest plant growing here for hundreds of thousands of years. Its petrified remains are found even in the prehistoric strata of the Katutau mountains. Desert poplar or turanga forms large forests in the floodplains of rivers. Moreover, it is found in the Red Book and it is a rare plant of Kazakhstani flora. It is also the endemic of our park. There is a legend that the tree was named after the ancient country of Turan. For the first time it is mentioned in the ancient monument of Zoroastrian literature Avesta and other works of the ancient Iranian and Persian literature, including the famous epic of the Persian poet Ferdowsi Shahnameh, the Book of Kings. Saka tribes, Massagets, Kushans and Parthians were called Turans, and part of this ancient country was located on the territory of modern Kazakhstan. The turanga, which is holy tree in Kazakh culture, has one more name: Jal Turanga, calling the wind. Even in windless weather, its branches sway softly as if invoking the elements of nature. There is another interesting feature of this tree. The leaves below are strikingly different from the leaves at the top of the crown. That's why it is also called Populus heterophylla. Surviving in the Ice Age, the mysterious turanga inspires people to create legends. So the Kazakh writer Bakenjan Bektepov has a story, Tears of Turanga. In it, the writer expounds the love story of the daughter of a bai named Turanga to the handsome Timir. On her 16th birthday, the father arranges a tournament and promises the winner the girl's hand. The match is won by Batyr Karajal. Being forcibly married, she gets rid of the child which she must give birth to. Aksakals curse and expel her from the village. Unable to bear the disgrace, Turanga kills herself and turns into a tree whose leaves are still crying with dew. However, there are a lot of wonderful trees beside Turanga in this amazing park. So the Caucasus Tree grows in the Sholok Mountains, in the Taiga Gorge, a tree which wood is drowning in the water. Hence its second name was born, iron or stone tree. The main area of its growth is the Caucasus region, which gave him the epithet of the Caucasus. But it can be met in the mountainous regions of Central Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq and Turkey. as if confirming its nickname, iron, not only because of the quality of wood, but also because of the nature of the tree. It grows mainly on dry stone precipices of mountains. It is surprising that despite such harsh conditions, the duration of his life reaches 500 years. One of the most famous objects of the Altyn-Emel National Park is, of course, an amazing singing Barkhan. This is the main trump card, as we say. From all over the world, not only near abroad or far abroad, or say Latin America or Europe. People from all over the world come here, literally from all over the world. There is a version that the name of this area was due to the Barkhan. Allegedly passing here with his army, Genghis Khan, seeing the mountains of golden sand in the sunset sun, exclaimed, Altyn-Emel, which means golden saddle. Khalik Bayadilov, the Director General of the Altyn-Emel National Natural Park, has not only been engaged in administrative activities for many years, but also studies the history of these places. He told the Time Puzzle crew that these words of Genghis Khan most likely were addressed not to the Barkhan. Altyn-Emel is a pass of Altyn-Emel, you know, where you can pass. You know, Emel is a saddle, Altyn is gold. Few people know, but the name which relates to the horse harness is not the only one in this part of the Jungarian Alatau. In addition to Emel, there is the Shilbir Gorge next to us. There is further the gorge of the Tizgin. All these are attributes of the saddle. The completeness of this harness, or whatever we say, saddle, kamcha, tizgin, shilbir, zhugun, all this kit comes from the rider. Therefore, we all associate this, that somewhere we think something like this. Well, some people say that the pass looks like a saddle, and that's why it is called like this. The mysterious history of origin of the name of this area continues to be researched by scientists, and we will certainly return to this topic in one of our episodes. In the meantime, let's go to an amazing singing Barkhan. It consists of two parts, southern and northern Barkhan. In addition to the presence of a so-called voice, it is unique in its dimensions. Now the height of the southern Barkhan is 150 meters, and the northern one is 100. The total length of this sand-colored miracle is almost 3 kilometers. The most famous mystery of the singing Barkhan is the sound that it emits in dry, windy weather. But very few people know that this natural object has more amazing secrets. The very origin of this phenomenon is mysterious. It is believed that it was formed as a result of a unique windrose due to the sand brought from the banks of the Ili River. But it is surprising that over the millennia of existence, the Barkhan did not change its location and was simply not destroyed by the same winds. Again, this opinion is not proved, but most likely it is some kind of action of electromagnetic induction, which collects grains of sand together and does not allow the Barkhan to crawl. Although we have very strong winds there, and it is possible that, as if there was not this induction, the Barkhan would simply crumble. That's why the Barkhan does not fall apart. This phenomenon gave rise to legends about its artificial origin by the will of higher or extraterrestrial forces. They say that there is the demon buried or hidden, ending with the fact that here, well, that this is generally a parking lot of UFO, which still cannot open this Barkhan and fly out from there. As you can see, the unusual sounds generated by the Barkhan excite the imagination. This is facilitated by the fact that the sand here is able to create ultrasonic vibrations that are not audible to the human ear. but which affect the psycho-emotional and physical state. It is the effect of ultrasound that gives rise to a sense of anxiety and unexplainable fear in this place. Probably that's how the legends about the ancient demon concluded in bowels of a Barkhan were born. But despite this, it has attracted tourists for a long time. Alexander Petrov, traveler, director of the travel agency who has been developing tourism in our country for more than 30 years, described his long acquaintance with the singing Barkhan to the crew of Time Puzzle.
Дело в том, что когда еще в начале 80-х годов это был, само собой, не национальный парк, это...
The fact is that in the early 80s it was not a national park by itself. It was just an interesting place, and access to this place was quite difficult. But since we were such tourists, there were almost no barriers that existed for us. Well, while we took the cards, we looked where it was located. The most interesting thing in this place was, of course, the singing Barkhan.
Самое интересное в этом месте представлял, конечно, поющий бархан, когда уже
When this territory received the status of a national park, we also continued to do excursions on the old habit, and already with foreigners took skis with us, ordinary skis. And then we climbed down from the singing Barkhan on the steepest slope. That is, when we stimulate, we provoke this by pulling people off the hill or rolling down some large objects, or by a very strong wind, which also makes the Barkhan sing, hum, make such peculiar sounds of a jet plane or even a rocket taking off. The phenomenon of singing sands is known to people from ancient times. It was described by Marco Polo during his trip to China. Singing sands exist all over the world, but the landscapes where they occur are of only two types: desert and coastal. Deserted singing sands are in China and Mongolia, Egypt, Africa and Arabia. Coastal are known on the Kola Peninsula, in the USA, in Great Britain and in the Hebrides. In this respect, the Altyn-Emel Barkhan, located in the middle of the mountains, is certainly unique. In 1962, the phenomenon of singing Barkhan was studied by the Leningrad physicist Vsevolod Arabadji. In his opinion, the nature of the origin of sound is the friction of the displaced grains of each other, which is especially evident when a person descends from the Barkhan. Better if it's a group of people. Studying the phenomenon of singing sands, scientists came to the conclusion that several conditions must be necessary for this phenomenon. In particular, the diameter of grains of sand, from 1 to 5/10 of a millimeter. They must necessarily contain silica and yet, for the sound of singing sands, a certain humidity. Most likely, there is a very interesting palette of the particles themselves. Probably it also plays a role. It is likely that the shape of the particles is unique. By the way, maybe such studies could later take place to investigate precisely the dimension of these particles and their shape. There is a curious belief among the park employees. If you take the sand off the Barkhan, it will necessarily return back. People say that even the plaster flew off the houses when this sand, despite a strict ban, was used in the construction. It also disappeared from tightly tied sacks, which were left on the street for one night only. It is not known if it is true, but on the morning of the next day after filming on the Barkhan, the members of our group did not even find any traces of sand in their shoes, which has caused certain inconvenience the previous night. Acquaintance with the National Natural Park Altyn-Emel turned out to be a real safari in an unusual world, as if from another universe, amazing with its unearthly landscapes, grotesque forms and incredible events. and we are looking forward to make new discoveries, just like our crew made in this amazing place. We dived into the world of extraordinary colors and phenomena of the Altyn-Emel National Park, which gave birth to many legends and mysterious stories. Some of them have a scientific explanation, and some of them still remain undisclosed. It was the Time Puzzle and me, Sergei Alexeyev.